Hello and welcome to the SGP podcast with Moser Racing. My name is Paul Glover. Joining me in the podcast studio is the one and only Alex Goldsmith. And this week we have the one and only, shall we call her infamous, Cammie.
Hello.
Cammie, how are you? Welcome to the podcast.
I'm very well, thank you. It was an unexpected pleasure to be here. Only found out yesterday whilst Dan and I were at a Hot Wheels event, so that was quite nice to find out.
A Hot Wheels event. Do tell us more about the Hot Wheels event. What's a Hot Wheels event?
It was an event set up by Hot Wheels.
Oh,
in the little toys. There was an event in Bicester Heritage, and it was for people to enter their modified cars with a chance of having it turned into a Hot Wheels toy.
Oh, do you know what? I have seen something around that actually. I think that's genuinely really exciting. I loved Hot Wheels as a kid. Was it a popular event?
Yeah, there was say thousands of people there. It was at the Bicester sort of aerodrome, so lots of space. People just brought their cars for the show and shine competition and for people to look at. And there was everything from sort of classic Porsches to, like a Rover 218 or something. Just everything from cars we used to see every day and took for granted in the 90s, all the way up to sort of, DeLorean and supercars, and the Mex Assist was there as well, that sort of Ford Escort that's Mark II that's been modified. It's bright orange. So it was a really good day out. Yeah, lots of kids there enjoyed it. Sort of great family day out.
The weather was good yesterday as well, wasn't it? I was at a meat festival yesterday myself, so the weather would have been fantastic for that too. So yeah, like I say, Cammie, welcome along to the podcast. You and I have spoken before. I think you kind of hinted in chat that Alex knows you pretty well. I think you've been around the sim racing scene for a little while now. So best place to always start is, where did you start out sim racing? What are your first memories of what, it could be arcade racing games or it could be sim racing games? I don't really care, to be honest with you, but I have fond memories as a kid playing the old games. So what was your first foray?
Oh, well, my dad was always a massive Formula One fan, so we had in the early 90s an Atari computer, sort of with the keyboard and the floppy disk that went in the side, and we had Jeff Crammon's Microprose Grand Prix. So that was where it started for me, sort of these really basic 3D polygonal graphics with no textures, so there was no writing on the cars, but you could kind of work out that's a Williams, that's a McLaren, just by their sort of iconic colours. And I remember they didn't have the license to use the real names, so rather than Nigel Mansell, I think it said something like Robert Davies or something like that, but you could backspace and type the real names in. Nothing stops you from doing that. And we didn't have joypads or wheels back then, so we were racing with joysticks.
Yeah, and keyboards as well. I remember keyboards playing a big part in games of the old times as well, right? Wasn't not quite the same as a wheel and pedals.
No, I mean, even the first wheel I did get, it was, it didn't have any force feedback, and you had to counterbalance it with the weight of one of those big old monitors. That's how, rather than bolting it to the table, it just relied on the weight of an old monitor to stay on the desk.
Yeah. I just have fond memories as a kid, like playing with my brothers and my sister. She's got older, with games like that. There's kind of like romanticism, I guess, in some way, like we kind of look back with fond memories, and I grew up with three brothers and a sister, so we spent many hours playing racing games, and they always used to find it funny, like, because they knew how serious I liked to play them and take them. They used to sort of ram me into the walls just to wind me up. But anyway, we're not here to talk about me. But Cammie, when did you realise there was a world of this online racing? What was your first foray into the online communities?
Oh, really early. I've been playing racing games since the year dot. So as soon as they started going online, I was there. Toka Race Driver, that had an online scene, possibly one of the earliest serious online racing, half simulator, half arcade, but it had a rating system before iRacing came out, and there was a lot of us who took that very seriously. And whilst it was a much smaller player base than iRacing or ACC, it was still very competitive. And as far as I can recall, I was sort of one of the highest rated drivers, but it got to the point where winning a race sort of got me 1 point, and coming second lost me 100 points. So then I sort of becoming very precious over this number. And I remember somebody pushed me in the gravel, and I knew that would cost me, several hundred points. And I sort of threw my controller. I never played that one again, and sort of moved on to games like GTR, and then iRacing came along as well in 2006. And yeah, I've very much grown up with it, sort of through the Xbox 360, various iterations of PCs I've had, PS4 as well. When Gran Turismo Sport, that was a major milestone, I think, for online sim racing. Very much made it accessible to everybody rather than just the purists.
Yeah, rather than just the elite side. Sometimes there can be a little bit of elitism, can't there, in sim racing? If it's not on a PC, people sometimes can turn their nose up at it a little bit. But I've always said, and I'm sure Alex would agree with this, that you've got to start somewhere, right, Alex? There's got to be like the first kind of injection into the vein, so to speak.
Well, you have to take in comparison, like, say, someone whose story is being told on the silver screen now, Jan Mardenborough. 2011, goes out and wins GT Academy, then has the opportunity of racing with a complete sim racer driver lineup at the Dubai 24 Hours, and goes on to make a big old career for himself. And funnily enough, it's quite funny how the line between sim racing and real life racing has been pretty much irreversibly blurred to the point of nothing, where sim racers have had opportunities in IRL. You look at Jardier, James Baldwin, winners of the Alpine Esports Series, which, funny enough, was helped by us at Sim Racing GP with regards to people entering and people competing, and it was live broadcasted, and they got the opportunity to have a go in an Alpine A110 GT4 car in France not that long ago. I had that chat with Matt Bincliffe, who was our previous guest on episode number 3 last time out. Just like the way that you have to start somewhere. It's like with me as a commentator, I had to start somewhere, and that started in karting, and then 2020 came along, and then ended up in sim racing as well to boot.
Yeah, it's a really good point. It's like you just you build the foundations, right, Cammie? And I think that's what's really important. And I think sometimes we forget that before the internet was as widespread as it is now, there were these tiny communities where people were doing these things offline, having these little races. I mean, you see it now with Rally as well. Like Rally's had a bit of a comeback with Richard Burns, out there still after all these years. But with you, when it comes to sim racing, what's your go-to? What kind of events do you like? Is it the GT3 like we've been seeing today, or would you put on a bit of Rally and go on a dirt track?
No, it'd be neither of those, actually. I've never... GT has been something I've learned to love. I always find them a little bit tricky, because I grew up with the F1 games. I've always adapted, just moulded my skills around downforce cars. So Formula 1, Formula 2, Formula 3, the LMP cars, that's where I'm most comfortable. I find GT cars very difficult, hence I tend to struggle a bit with them, especially in the sort of more realistic simulators like ACC. You get the weight transfer moving all around, and you don't quite have the downforce to help you just stick to the road through corners. And rallying, I enjoy it. I'm not that good at it. You have to turn before the corner comes up, essentially. And it's just such a counterintuitive thing. It's like, no, I'm going to die if I do that. But I need to do that. But it doesn't make sense to do that. And I just can't train my mind to do that. I can sort of get some middling times, but you see some of these people on sort of Dirt Rally 2 and Colin McRae and Richard Burns, and the times they get, the amount of times they must redo a track to learn it, to know they can turn in just to clip the edge of a tree or something and keep going. It's mind-boggling how they do that.
So if you were to, after this podcast, sit down and switch on a game, would it be the F1 series then? The kind of the Codemasters EA?
No, I find it a bit too arcadey. I actually got to try Automobilista 2 yesterday, and I
Okay.
immediately fell in love. So I've bought myself a copy of that, and it just installed maybe an hour before we've gone live. So I'll definitely be trying that. Sort of, it's got a range of sort of 80s, 90s, I think 1970s F1 cars as well, which I really can't wait to have a go of. Those times where downforce was developing.
Yeah, and the sound though as well. The sound of those engines, Cammie. I mean, that's the one thing I think we forget now with the hybrids that we see in Formula One, is just how good those older Formula One cars sounded, especially in the 70s and the 80s.
Absolutely, yeah. I went to Spa-Francorchamps last year for the Formula One, and the strangest thing was, from a distance, the Formula 3 cars were louder than the Formula 1 cars. Which, it doesn't make sense, that shouldn't be right. And I've heard V8 Formula 1 cars at Brands Hatch when they have an occasional, a demo drive, because they can't have Formula 1 there. And you can hear the F1 car from the other side of the circuit, which isn't the case for modern Formula 1 cars. I think the turbos just suppress that sound, because the Formula 2s have very much the same issue where their turbo suppresses it, but whereas Formula 3 doesn't have a turbo, it just lets that sound out more. And yeah, we need to have cars where you can hear them long before you can see them.
Yeah, I've been to an F1 historic event at Brands Hatch, and I think you hear the kind of 90s Formula One car coming at you, and then it comes around. I was around. It was Paddock Hill Bend, and then the car's just gone to the sort of left of me, and then this just epic noise just hits my ears like from nowhere. It's just hard to explain unless you've experienced it. I mean, if you stay there too long, you probably end up going deaf. But earplugs I think are needed. But just an amazing sound, and Automobilista 2's got that in plenty. I think it's still got a long way to go in some of the way that some of the cars feel, but it's just got such great content. I think you're going to love it.
It's got a great range of cars as well. ACC's quite limited. AC is great, but there's such a modding scene where there isn't that uniformity that ACC has. It kind of needs to be like Gran Turismo Sport, where you've got a huge range of cars not beholden to any one regulation, but you're also running the same software and you're not all having to run around grabbing mods. And you said, was it like at Brands Hatch, the Historic Masters?
Yeah.
I was there as well. So we're probably standing next to each other, not realising.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it was a long time ago. Brands Hatch used to be my local circuit, so it still is really. It's not that far away from me now.
Didn't know we were that local to each other.
Yeah. I'm about half an hour away from the circuit now as well. I used to live about 15 minutes away. Maybe not even that, actually, thinking about it. But yeah, I used to go to Brands every so often when they put on their different festivals and historic events. It's just because it's the only way you're going to see some of these cars, unless you want to travel down to Goodwood Festival Speed or to the Revival. They're two great events for me. Cammie, you've also done a bit of commentating. You were with us the previous round as well. You and I have also commentated together there. How did you get involved with a bit of commentating? Where did you start?
School teachers told me I don't shut up, so I thought I might as well use it for some good.
I imagine Alex got told the same as well. Alex?
Oh no, I got that told more by my parents and also the school. Well, no, I was actually quite quiet at school, but yeah, I got told off at the age of 3 because I was naming cars as we were walking past. Got a slap on the wrist by my mum. She was like saying, "Will you shut up?" And my dad went, "Oh, he's a car nut."
Oh no! Oh no! He's one of them.
He's one of them.
Yeah. So you got told at school you didn't shut up, so you tried to put it to some good use.
I say I'm only joking, really. I did talk a lot in school, but I think I don't know. I'm not quite sure what inspired me. I know for a time I realised whilst I was doing sim racing, as work took over and I had less time to dedicate to practicing and such, I just found that I was able to talk about it quite well, articulate, and you just have to have that stream of consciousness where you're not stopping too much to think, because if you stop and think, then the moment's gone and then you're trying to play catch up with what's happening on screen next. And I thought, well, I can use my experience, at least from sim racing, to be able to maybe give an insight to people who don't do sim racing but maybe are familiar with cars or gaming and just want to have a better feeling, because not everyone has a steering wheel, rig set up. And these drivers make it look so easy. So I thought, well, I might be able to give a little bit of an insight, and especially when it comes to the sort of psychological aspect. You were saying you just let people go past, and in an endurance race, as much as I was sort of moaning about Luke flashing the lights, yeah, I'd probably let them pass too, because it's an endurance race. I can't defend that for 400 laps or 200 laps. So there's no point in trying to do so.
Yeah, indeed. And for those of you who listen to the podcast, Cammie's referring to the SGP Moser Championship that's going on at the moment, and we're taking a bit of a break. Cammie's joined us to talk about all good things sim racing. So do you remember which league or community you started first commentating for?
Ooh, the very, 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 very first one would have been RCI International.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I did one stint with them, just to sort of practice a little bit. I was one of the colour commentators. There was a duo already, and then they were happy to have me along as a little bit of, I said I just wanted to try and practice a little bit and see how I do and sort of maybe get their feedback as well. And then I sort of began doing it full-time with Onid Racing, with sort of Johnny Ashley and Dan Hyde. Oh No, I Died Racing. I'm sure they'd enjoy the plug. Started commentating for them because I realised I'm not quick enough to keep up with them. I might as well just talk about them. in iRacing, I'm quick. In ACC, I really struggle with the physics a little bit. And then Dan Hyde and I had a stint doing a commentary and broadcasting for a series called Glick Racing, which was a sort of a cryptocurrency company doing racing events, and they'd pay the winners in this cryptocurrency, which was, it was big money. Like the winners got $300 or 300 euros for winning and 200 for second. And I think we sort of did a whole season of that, and that was enjoyable, although it was tricky because, Alex, I'm sure you'll understand here, every car looked identical because they all had to run the same livery.
Oh yes, yeah. That's the thing when you have a league that decides to run a spec livery, and the amount of times that you're either squinting at the screen that you're commentating or what's going on. That's why I like the fact when we've got races like what we've got at the moment, the Moser Racing Endurance Championship, there is quite a lot of colour differential. Apart from the fact when you have a purple Ferrari and a purple McLaren in the same grid. Well done Breaking Point and Onid on that one. Not throwing people under the bus right there. But Cammie, when you had your first experience of commentating with RCI, how did you approach that, and what were the first feelings? Did you have like the good butterflies in the stomach, like saying, "Oh, can't believe this is actually happening"?
Yeah, I was a little bit nervous. You know the nerves race drivers get just before they start a race. It's that anxiety of I'm just waiting to go. I've very much had that because I'm trying to prepare myself, but I can't prepare something to say. I don't know what I'm going to say. It depends what's going to be happening. It depends what they're going to ask me. So I remember being very nervous, and I, as the third one there, I very much didn't want to be a third wheel and sort of not really be able to contribute much, because how crushing would it be that as soon as they turn to me, I say, "Oh, you kind of said what I was going to say," because you're doing a great job already. But it went very well, and they had positive feedback for me, and sort of since then I've been able to commentate with the likes of yourself, Alex, and Lewis McGlade and Chris McCarthy. So I've always tried to nudge them a little bit, like, how could I do? And they've generally been polite, and I don't whether I was truly awful, they've not actually told me I was awful, but I've had decent feedback, so I assume I'm going in the right direction.
Yeah, we are keeping an eye on the chat actually during this as well. DStack11 says would be interested to know what Cammie's iRacing series of choice is.
I absolutely adored Formula Renault 2 litre, but it's gone now. It's like a legacy series, so nobody races it in it anymore. I jumped in Formula Renault 3.5. Absolutely love that. Great sounding cars. Formula 3 can be a bit hectic, but I do enjoy it. I also tried out some Indy racing, some oval racing, and was surprisingly good at it. Just my little noodly arms went quite got quite tired on the wheel quite quickly, sort of vibrating, because it's like a Fanatec wheel, and I haven't raced for so long, and just endless bumps on an oval. It's like, yeah, my arms are going numb now. So maybe I need to turn down the force feedback, but
About to say, yeah,
like surrendering.
I've turned down mine a little bit in the past for very similar reasons. I don't know about you, but when I'm racing, I tend to grip the wheel a little bit too hard, and I try really hard to. I become aware of that, so I try to really hard to relax. We've had a few other comments in chat, going back to when we mentioned Richard Burns rally. Herf, one of the guys running the event today, said, Richard Burns is the Dark Souls of sim racing. I think he's probably not wrong. It's like a completely different art form. If you chuck me in a rally game, I think I'd be amongst the trees. DStack11 also says, "Oh man, AMS2 deserves a wider player base." And I think that's very true. I think it's one of the things where it started off a little bit a bit slowly, like a lot. I mean, we remember when ACC first came out. I mean, there was some kind of daggers thrown in its direction, but the game's really evolved and become the great game that we know it to be now. I think sometimes people expect things to kind of be the finished product straight away, but it doesn't work like that anymore. The world has changed. I remember when games would come out on a disc, we couldn't update them there. If there was a bug that hadn't been discovered before it went gold, you were stuck with that bug. I mean, we live in a world now we can get updates to games, and we've made some great changes. But going back to your commentary, Cammie, what do you enjoy about it? Is it about the fact that you just get to talk for 6 hours, or is there something else? Because for me, it's my passion. I hope that my passion comes across, and I want to share that love and that passion across to others. I imagine yourself, it's going to be something similar.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it really is similar. And sim racing doesn't quite get the love of real world motorsports, and I always think, if the commentator isn't excited, how can the spectator be excited? So I tried to bring that excitement across. If there's an incident or something and the commentator just stays rather muted because, well, they're not really in danger, it's a video game, yeah, they've gone off and hit the wall, okay, you've just sucked the soul out of that. I try to treat it as I would in the real world. I do say, if that was a real world crash, they'd have a couple broken legs, or something like that. I do wish ACC had more of the crash physics, which I think could add a bit of spice, because I think there's a guilty pleasure. People do like seeing the cars wreck a little bit, and it is a bit muted when it breaks the illusion of the sim racing. When a car smashes into the wall and all you get is the slightly lifted bonnet.
Yeah. I think a lot of that is to do with, you can imagine if you are a manufacturer, like, I don't think Gran Turismo has ever had a damaged model, has it? And I think a lot of that is to do with licensing. People don't want their cars to be smashed to smithereens. They want to portray a good image. But on the flip side, us sim racers want realism. When we talk about gravel and things like that, like you watch Formula One at the moment. I mean, Perez yesterday around Monza, for instance, got beached. Now, there aren't a lot of games that really replicate that anymore. I mean, you referenced Jeff Grammond. I mean, back in the day, you used to get a tow truck to come and get you. The car would be lifted and you'd be out of the race. these days everything's a little bit too easy, but also it's kind of a fine line, isn't it, between something being enjoyable but something also being realistic, and like where is that line, what's right and what's wrong. And I don't think you're ever going to please anybody on that front, but
I don't know. I think with respect to events that we put on with ACC and iRacing and all those sort of simulators, I think if somebody spent thousands of pounds on their rig and they want absolute realism, I think they will expect, the gravel trap needs to be a danger. If I go in it and can't drive myself out, I am stuck. And it's that sort of danger. If you take away that danger, then it will start feeling more like a video game where, you're not penalised for the mistakes. So I'm absolutely in favour of being stuck in the... If anything, it's things like that which have turned me off a little bit from sim racing. If there's a massive incident in a race, there are no safety cars to bunch the field up. Yeah. So in a long race, if I'm running 15th, I think, in real life, the field could bunch up again, but that will never happen because it's a sim race. So, there are a few things that sim racing could do, and there is Assetto Corsa 2 on the horizon. I'm not sure if it's slated for next year or 2025 maybe, but if it's at least an option for those of us who want absolute realism, that casual players could turn it off. You can always drive yourself out the gravel, but it'd be nice to have the choice.
Yeah, I agree. I think I've touched on this with somebody in the past, around this in a previous podcast that I've done, in the sense that I do remember games back in the day. You could tweak the realism to that effect, and it just seems to have disappeared. When it comes to racing lines, I think I remember Jeff Gravand having particularly a really good way of it handled the wet racing line, but we seem to have seen that kind of disappear in sim racing as well. So yeah, I agree. I'm on board with the realism train. I'm like, I want a bit more realism. I want to be a little bit more punished, in the hope that it'll give me a bit of a chance if I just keep it clean. Like people we're only human. We make mistakes from time to time. So anyway, moving on from commentary to what do we call it? We call it graphic design, right? I mean, I've seen a lot of your work, Cammie, and we even saw on the back of one of the cars earlier in the race that we've been commentating on that your brand, your Go for Gap logo was on the back of one of the cars. So how long have you been interested in graphic design, and where did you start to combine that love for your love of racing?
Go for the Gap.
Sorry, apologies.
Of course, it's sort of after Ayrton Senna's sort of take on his famous quote. I mean, I've been drawing since I was 4 years old. Sort of first began sort of drawing video game characters, and then also race cars. If it involved speed, I was interested. Fast-paced video games, fast racing cars, I was interested. I was drawing them, designing my own, usually drawing Nigel Mansell's Williams. Maybe if I'd had a good race on the PC, on the Grand Prix game, I'd draw it, sort of try to recreate the moment in a sort of pencil illustration, and defacing school books, textbooks with illustrations as well, and sort of getting told off for that. And now, graphic artist, graphic illustrator. I do animation or motion graphics. It's not animation as in redrawing every frame like Mickey Mouse, but I bring the graphics to life. Doing illustrations that are sort of more focused on a more marketing level, but people can still have them framed and hung on their wall. And so I suppose about 1,000 people do have them on their walls now. Because Go for the Gap just began as a name for an Etsy store, and that's closing in very quickly on 1,000 sales, which I didn't think I'd ever reach. I thought I'd get a few hundred and sort of think myself lucky for that. And now I'm trying to focus on, rather than just selling prints to people, being able to work with teams and brands and drivers directly to sort of to bring their brand across in a way that they thought was possibly out of their budget sort of several years ago. because I enjoy what I do, and yes, AI art has come a long way, but that it still can't replicate a real human artist at the moment.
Correct, agree. You can't replace that ingenuity of a human brain, as much as these AI things can do so much. Completely agree. They got a place, but they won't fully replace proper artists like yourself. So, looking back at the Etsy store, I mean, 1,000. I mean, that's impressive going. And so you originally set that out and thought, oh, I'll sell a few hundred, but you didn't expect to do the number. What's been your most popular item on the store?
It's a illustration of Lando Norris's McLaren in golf colours at Monaco. Sort of a side-on view, sort of slightly tilted, with a lot of speed lines, with the barrier behind him and the harbour, which is just a sort of a blur of blue lines and in the sky. Yeah, that's been definitely the biggest seller. But the time it takes to make them, it's more prudent for me financially to sort of take on commissions rather than just drawing what I like and hoping somebody buys it.
Yeah, I was going to say, is there one that you have in your store which you love and it hasn't sold as much as you thought it would?
Oh, lots of them.
Okay.
I suppose I've done some Formula One illustrations sort of on an unofficial basis that sort of commemorate each round, but because they're not driver or team specific, they've probably appealed to the people who live in those countries or who went to those Grand Prix, but to nobody else really.
Okay. With Stevie B just asked in chat, what's your favourite artwork? And I'm guessing that means any artwork that they have, not necessarily one of your own.
Oh man. Might have to come back to them on that. Sort of try to pin down. I mean, there's artists I really look up to. Sort of Chris Rathbone. I'm sure that's a name many people are aware of. He does lots of illustrations in motorsport and very much inspiration for me when I was coming into the motorsport scene. It was his artwork I saw up on flagpoles and posters and such when I met Alex at W Series in 2019. And I thought, I could do a similar thing. I do illustration. I didn't realise there was a market for race drivers wanting illustrations, but I was in a different business before that. I used to work in video games.
Sorry, Paul. I mean, one of the drivers that you currently work with, who isn't just an avid IRL driver with the GT Cup and McLaren, but he's also a keen sim racer, Will Dendy. Who you've got to know quite well, and you do quite a lot of artwork for him. In terms of client requirements, what is the sort of like process from when you strike up that initial conversation to rendering the final artwork, getting approval from the customer? How long does that process take? Can it depend on what's required?
I had a project recently with a driver, Nelson King, in the Mini Challenge series. He's recently picked up sponsorship from, he's joined the Laser Racing Tools team. So
the British touring car.
That's it. So I assume he's on their sort of on their radar to be their next driver, maybe next year or the year after, depending how he does in the Mini Challenge series. And I got the project done probably within the week. It takes a few days to make. Before that, I put some sketches together and just sort of get an idea, is this what you like? I'm imagining this sort of angle of the car with this background. But I've got to the point now where I'm at a level sort of semi-established where people say, look, I like this thing you made, do it for me. Oh, okay, then Then I already know, you like that style, I'll just work to that style. Because I tried to change it up a little bit. I'm always looking at other artists, seeing what they're doing and thinking, what can I incorporate into my work? And the art teachers in school always sort of told me, you can't just keep doing the same thing, try different things. And now I find myself as one of the only artists to sort of have a range of styles rather than sort of being known for one particular style. But having to work in video game industry, I had to keep adapting to sort of different companies' their styles that were pre-established.
And when you're doing that kind of commission work, what does it generally cover? Is it things like poster artwork, or do you do any helmet designs? What kind of thing, or is it different depending on what the client is asking for?
So it's been everything from social media. So if they want an Instagram post, Instagram stories, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, everything like that to help them promote a particular event. I've got a project coming up for the Burkitt 6-hour relay. They want a front cover for their programs, which will also double up as posters and maybe some hero cards for drivers to sign. It can also be, I've done a little bit of helmet design. A driver from British GT, Jamie Stanley, he's known for being an absolute Sonic the Hedgehog fan. He's got like Sonic the Hedgehog racing boots and gloves. And he just saw an illustration of Sonic the Hedgehog I did, and he said, could you draw me Sonic the Hedgehog for my helmet? And that was an unexpected little job. There's been a couple livery designs as well. Sort of YouTube sim racing legend that everyone knows, Jimmy Broadbent. He's got his MX-5 Minty that he's entering into time attack events. And it got a complete redo, restyling, and I was fortunate enough to do this sort of Japanese-inspired sort of drifting style livery that's sort of teal and sort of a hot pink, magenta, black and white. And I know it's got the simracing.gp logo on it as well.
It has indeed, yes. Have you done anything with the with any other cars, or has it just been Minty so far, or has he spoke to you about doing any other work for him?
No, it's just been Minty at the moment. There's a lot of livery designers out there who they know their way around 3D software, so they can definitely present their work in a better way than I can. I'm still a bit of a old-fashioned 2D sort, but it's been enjoyable. And I've done some liveries as well for drivers on Assetto Corsa and such. It's just a case of opening Photoshop and sort of editing files. So I've done the liveries for sort of Dan Hyde's car and a few other people's cars, and my own cars as well. And yeah, I had sort of had half a chance at doing a Lamborghini's livery, and then I sort of did the design, and then they went with somebody else. So that was a little bit. Does that
happen? Does that happen a lot? I guess that must happen a lot, right? Does it?
No, that was a really rare thing. They paid me up front for the job. I did the design, they liked it, and then they went a bit radio silent. And when I checked, hey, we still got to hit this deadline, they just said, we went to somebody else. But somebody else who could they had the 3D rendering, which obviously, plays a part in impressing a client. And they sort of gave me all these requirements that the livery had to meet, and then the other company, their design didn't meet any of the requirements, but they went with it. So maybe I played it a bit safe, I don't know.
Well, I guess it's one of those things you learn from, right? You kind of... That's life, right?
That's life. They paid up front, so I couldn't be too upset. And they didn't ask for the money back or anything. I did the job. But obviously the person, they had deep pockets, and you get clients who have deep pockets and just go, look, just do this job. And some people who just want to give you £20 and then nitpick about everything. And I'd rather have the prior one. I'd rather have someone pay me up front and then change their mind.
Also coming on to other work that you're doing. You and I talk quite a lot anyway, Cammie, because
we're best mates.
Best mates. And big thanks to Charlie Martin for introducing us as well, because we were all at what was it for the brand finale at W Series back in 2019, where Jamie Chadwick started a run of form of taking 3 W Series titles on the trot. But also there's quite a few big names within sim racing when it comes to drivers, one of which who we both know very, very well, who you actually beat in a competition to join Team Fordzilla a little while ago, Charlie Crossland. I remember when we talked about that story, and you told me the ins and outs. What was it like actually being able to join a manufacturer-backed team with Fordzilla back then, when there was an open opportunity. And I remember the story, but I think it'll probably be coming better from you about what Charlie said about the fact that he was not 100% happy that you beat him, but now he's with one of the big teams in sim racing these days. He's with Williams Esports now, but a couple of years ago, it was
Really?
a very
I hadn't been following. I have to admit, I hadn't been following his progress, and
yeah.
I'm happy for him. I mean, he was young when so Ford held a tryout event at the Red Bull Gaming Sphere in London, and I think when Charlie was there, he must have been 16 actually. He was a very quiet lad. I went there as a bit of a networking exercise. I thought these will be good people to meet. I'm fast. I don't expect to win, but it'll be a good, good to meet these people. Give them my business card. I might get some work out of it, and I might impress with the driving. And they had 6 computers set up, 3 for Forza Racing or Forza Motorsport, and 2 for Gran Turismo Sport. And it was a fastest lap competition, but you had to race in freeze. So unless you had a clear track ahead of you, you wouldn't get the fastest lap, which is very much what happened to Charlie. Because I could get ahead and defend, he may as well have been faster. But he never had the clear track in front of him, at least when we were racing together, to do it. And then there was a bit of a mix-up where I thought he had posted a faster lap time, but then they said, no, he hadn't. Like, I thought I read 0.070, and they said, no, it was a 707. He was a few tenths behind you. I thought, okay. And, yeah, I think he left early because he had to go. He was 16. I don't know if his parents picked him up, but he had to leave.
Maybe had a curfew. Yeah.
He was 16. It's understandable.
Yeah,
and
yes,
I remember him. He was a quiet guy. He's a sort of quite introverted. He's an introverted person, and I think that counted against him because everybody else was talking to each other and making friends, but he just sat in the corner with headphones on. So, I mean, it's been so long now, I can say it. I don't think the staff particularly warmed to him because they didn't talk to him, and then when they did hear from him, he was calling, I think he was saying, hey, I was cheated out of a win. My time was changed. And when they said, well, do you have a photo of your time? He didn't have a photo of it. And so he was quite sort of vocally angry about that. And yeah, the Fordzilla people, when they took us all to Autosport International, sort of just before the COVID crisis kicked off, sort of they, after a drink, they were singing Merry and sort of revealing true feelings. Oh yeah, that guy, it was a bit of a pain, wasn't he? We sent him something just to sort of keep him quiet a bit because he wouldn't stop messaging us about how he was the fastest. And then it makes me think, oh, did I see the time correctly? Was it 070? And we didn't really get to race together much after that. We entered one event, the Brit car team Brit. They had the GT Challenge, which I believe you commentated on.
Yeah, alongside David Christie, where you guys actually unfortunately had to use at the time, which was the biggest dog on R-Factor 2, the Radical, which was the EcoBoost powered car. The only reason why Team Fordzilla put an entry in that was because of the fact they had an EcoBoost Ford and a V6 engine in it. And I still remember Cammie putting every single bit of effort into it. And I think if I remember correctly, you told me that Charlie was just rocking up and saying, "Oh, can I borrow your setup?" Like literally.
He wasn't a fan of R-Factor 2, and there is no and it's not a dig at him. There is no setup community like iRacing and ACC. You can just go to like Coach Dave Academy, grab a setup that is 99% there, and then tweak it. R-Factor 2 doesn't have that sort of community, so we were going in a bit blind with a dog of a car. And he had incidents on the opening laps in the first 2 races, and then threw the towel in. Was like, I'm done with this. It's terrible. And then we were like, okay, we haven't got a teammate now. We had a team entered, and it didn't look. Fordzilla weren't very happy. They're like, hey, you've entered this event, dropped out. It doesn't look very good on us. We know it's not the best car out there. It's just the only car powered by a Ford engine.
Yeah. Yeah, so you see, yeah, you both had your arms tied behind your back on that one, which was a real shame because if the Ford GT was in that, then fine, it'd be a perfect representation of Team Fordzilla. But you know, like you not only were racing for them, but you also helping out with the graphic design work. You mentioned about Autosport International because the 2024 one is coming up very very soon, and Cammie, you really have got your teeth into a lot of work, which includes Autosport International for 2024. Congratulations, first of all, on that. But how did that all come about? Because every time we talk, it's normally at like either late afternoon or late evening or something when we both had full on days, you and I. And it's quite interesting that Autosport International have now gone with a good mate of mine to provide like the graphic design work. I mean, how did that all come about?
I've got two people to thank for that specifically, and they're probably not watching this, but you know them very well. Racing mentor Jess Shanahan and Rose Reed. We were at Motorsport Days Live last year, and the sort of marketing director, I think Ben Wibley at Autosport, was in the sort of the upstairs special cordoned off area for VIPs of Autosport. And I had my book, and I just wanted to leave a few copies of my book dotted around for people to pick up and look at.
When you say book, is that like a portfolio of your work? Is that what it is? Right. Okay.
Yeah, so I'd printed out sort of a book with, I think it's there up there on the shelf actually somewhere. Oh, the camera's sort of lagging behind real time, but it's up there, the yellow one. Just that I could post out to potential clients so they can just flick through, and rather than an email getting deleted or forgotten, you know, a book can sit there for a year and someone might pick it up and go, oh yeah, I like this. I thought I'll leave some of them around. Oh, but I'm not allowed to go up there. That's cordoned off. And Jess and Rose were like, no, just go up there and blag it. You know, go up there, put your book down, and then just plead forgiveness if they tell you off. And then I got up there, and luckily Ben recognised me from like, I'd met him once before that at Autosport with Fordzilla, I think it was. And he said, oh, Ben, yeah, Cammie, I remember you. Yeah, I actually, don't laugh at me, but I've got this idea. I wondered if you could help me with it. And it just went from there. It's like, yay, breaking the rules got me a job. And I wouldn't have gone up there had it not been for Rose just, edging me on, because it's hard to just go up and talk to people, to go where you've been told not to go, because you're worried about being told off or kicked out or, just breaking the rules. And when you're an artist, you're just someone, I just like to be in my own space, I'm introverted, just sit down and make my own thing. But being self-employed, you have to get out there, you have to talk to people, you have to initiate conversations, which is, I've had to learn to be a bit of an extrovert. So I got talking to Ben, and that's it. Yeah, he's like, yep, I want to work with you next year, next Autosport, let's do it. And there's going to be, I think, about 16 illustrations as part of the Autosport International marketing. Each of them will be animated as well, so they sort of run on a loop, 15 seconds, which will be on all the digital screens at the Birmingham NEC. It will be on sort of podiums and backdrops and posters and banners, flags, everything. And it's not going to be until I'm there that I sort of realise how real it is, because this is the biggest gig I've ever had, and a bit of imposter syndrome as well. When I see other artists out there, I'm like, oh man, how did I get this gig? Just, it always comes down to being in the right time in the right place, and sometimes who you know, not what you know.
The question I have for you though, Cammie, is will you be able to enter the VIP cordon off area when you go?
I should hope so. I asked them, I said, with hotels, I assume Autosport must get like a discount or something because of how many people you must have to book in for the hotels. Do you have anything like that, or a recommendation of a hotel? And Ben went, no, they make us pay full rate like everybody else. I even got it cheaper by booking online rather than going in there in person. So no, we don't get any special treatment for being Autosport.
It's quite funny you say that. I mean, also you bring up a very, very good point about imposter syndrome, which some of us, I mean myself, I've also had moments where that has happened. Like I have that pinch myself moment and thinking, am I really good enough to do this? Am I really here? You know, you're constantly. Imposter syndrome is a form of self-doubt, isn't it, Cammie?
Yeah, I think with racing, it's very linear. You're either first or you're second or you're third, and it's easy to see how good you are. But with something more like commentary or graphic design, where it's much more open to interpretation and people can have differing opinions, I'll always look at other people's work and go, yeah, theirs is better. And it doesn't matter what I do. After, the day after I've made whatever I've worked on, I will be, I could have done that. I could have changed that. I could keep tweaking it, but I need to kind of call that job a day. That's a day I need to move on now. And yeah, it's nice having people tell me how much they think my work's cool and they want to have their car and their team illustrated. And especially with sim racing, because nobody can take photos of those cars. So they like to have it immortalized. So I was hoping to work with Alpine Esports, but then the whole Le Mans Virtual Series didn't seem to kick off this year. So that was a kicking, like not kicking myself, but I'm so mad that the LMVS didn't come around this year.
That is a shame. But you must be genuinely really proud of the autosport. I mean, like to your point, if you didn't go up and have that conversation, you wouldn't having your work shown at a really big motorsport event, and from that, other opportunities will hopefully come, because there'll be people that haven't seen your work, right? I think your brand, or your brand, I guess, what is a good word, is known amongst the sim racing community. I mean, I've seen your work and the liveries you've done, and I see your stuff that's on your Etsy shop, but I really like it. I think it's a really good look. But there'll be other people out there that don't know it, and being in that huge NEC on screen, thing like that, there'll be people there. Not everybody, of course, but there'll be some people go, "Oh, I wonder who made that." And then, and then from that, you might get other work. You just other
I hope so.
Opportunities come from opportunities, right? And I completely get the whole imposter syndrome thing. I think we all suffer that to a point, whether it's in your day job or whether it's doing things like this or whatever. And it is hard, because whether you're doing commentary on something or whether you're doing a piece of work, artwork, there'll be people that like it and there'll be people that don't. But more than often, the people that don't like it are the ones that are vocal. So it kind of reinforces that feeling of imposter syndrome as well. But yeah, I think that's a really, really good point, and I think that's genuinely really, really exciting. So when does that all kick off? When have you started the work on that, or is that later in the year? Yeah,
no, there's plenty of work. Most of it's done. It's a 4-month stint, and we're just starting month 4. So we're going to try and finish up everything, wrap everything up, and it will be done for the end of September, because I've got other projects that I need to get started on as well. A graphic agency contacted me with regards to possibly doing... They just said a GT team want artwork for the 2024 season. I don't know if it's... It sounded like it could be a WEC team, but I'm not sure, and the worst part is when they say, give us a price. I'm like, what's your budget? And they go, no, we're not going to tell you our budget. I'm like, right, okay. And that's where imposter syndrome gets me, because it's tempting to be cheap. But if I'm too cheap, then it's just not worth... You got
to pay bills, right? You got to live, and that's the thing, right? And on that, do you get a lot of people knocking on your door going, can you do something for us for free? But we'll give you this. Because you see it a little bit on influencers, shall we call them, reach out and they try and get things for free. If you give me your service, I'll do you a post to my 500,000 followers and whatnot. But people have got bills, mortgages and everything else to pay. So do you get a little bit of that as well in what you do? Oh, we've lost her. We've just lost Cammie. I don't know if I just caused any offence by asking that question, or whether she's having a technical issue.
I think These things do happen.
Yes, they do.
I mean, to be honest with you, I still get it. If I'm
Yeah.
honest with you, I've had people like saying, "Yeah, well, we can help you with outreach," and it's like, oh, hang on a second, you're talking to someone who's been a commentator since 2017. What side of Jupiter did you just come from?
Yeah.
It's but
What the heck?
oh,
So
hang
you're
on,
back.
there we are.
You're
She's
back.
back. She's
Oh,
back.
You're
you-
back.
I
You're
don't know
back.
what.
We heard the what the heck. So I'm glad it wasn't anything
No.
too strong.
There
No.
was banging on the outside of the building, and then suddenly, then you mentioned knocking, and I thought you were referring to that sort of.
No, I didn't. No.
No, sorry, I don't know
right,
what happened there.
It's okay. It's all right. Technical things happen. No, I was just asking, and Alex kind of carried on the conversation as you disappeared. Is that do you get many people knocking on the door going, "Can you do this and that?" But we won't pay you. We'll give you some other kind of service.
A little bit.
On top of that, yeah. Does
It's
that
been-
frustrate you?
Oh yeah. To no end. It's usually been these accounts like Instagram accounts or Twitter accounts that just regurgitate Formula One news that's going on, and they'll say, "Oh, you can buy followers, or if we share your stuff, pay us this much money, and we'll get you more clicks and such." And there are also people who say, "Yeah, can you do this graphic for me?" And I'll say, "Okay." And it's tricky because if it takes me a couple of days to do it, I need to cover my day's time. And I'll try to be accommodating of people that, okay, you're not a big business, you're just one person. But then sometimes there are people who just don't value what I'm doing, and I'm not going to bend over backwards and, help them out if they don't value what I'm doing.
Yeah. No, I think it's unfortunately there are people out there that will try and take advantage of others, which is sad, really.
Commentators get it as well, I'm sure. You're just
Yeah.
talking. How hard can it be? You're just talking.
I think it's like you say, Cammie. I mean, when you spoke to me about the fact that you were going to start commentating, like the amount of people that think that you're just talking about what's going on. Well, it's like Paul knows this because I was sending him a load of information, like run a show, calendar for this season, driver team lineups. It's all this preparation that I think a lot of people don't see behind the scenes, where you've got to have track maps, you've got live timing, you've got Discord servers, you've got cameras set up, headsets plugged into computers. I think it's the same with graphic design. I mean, my dad was in that business for best part of over 30 years before he retired, and I understand with regards to what you do, there is a very, very laborious, intense process that you're trying to capture this idea, and it doesn't always hit home the first time. It's like, hang on, well, I might need to tweak it there, tweak it here, maybe add some shadow, maybe some blur lines or something like that. That it is a ongoing developmental process to trying to get that final product out as a graphic designer. The same can be said with regards to commentary or hosting a podcast, that you've got to know your subject matter, or you ask the right questions to open up a decent conversation. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think if you're a good commentator or a good designer or a good artist or even a good musician, if you're that good, you make it look easy, and people then get fooled into thinking it is easy. And yeah, I've heard people commentate where I'd say maybe commentary isn't their forte, and they don't know corner names, they don't know driver names, they're struggling to work out what had happened even, or maybe for what reason something had happened. Or they'll have their own conversation about something, and something's happening on the track, but they don't want to interrupt themselves and re-engage with what's happening on the track. They want to finish their little anecdote. And with artists, it's easy for them to think, oh, I can draw that, it's easy. And then it can come out looking a bit of a dog's dinner sometimes.
Yeah, I'm definitely no artist. Some would say I'm definitely no commentator.
Well, I mean, everyone does have their favourites, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Yeah. And actually, we were talking about Charlie Crossland earlier on. I met him for the first time at the Sim Racing Expo last year, and he actually came up to me and he said, "I'd just like to say I really enjoyed your commentary," and it just those few words genuinely meant a lot. You know, it's just nice for somebody to come over and just take their time. Say, I really enjoyed your commentary. You know, because that made my day, right? Somebody appreciated my work, and that's really nice to hear. And you know, didn't have to do that. So you know, and you know, so we now follow each other, you know, on social media and whatnot. But we're not like best of buds. But it's somebody that I would kind of like go, you know, I'll remember him for taking his time out to say, you know, I really enjoyed that. I thought you were really good. So
And
it's nice when people do.
It should mean more as well, because he was really introverted.
Yes.
You know, if I don't know if he is more outgoing and a bit more confident in himself, but he's obviously stepped out of his comfort zone a little bit to come and speak to you, because I remember him as being just a very quiet, just keeps to himself sort of guy.
He's quiet in nature, I would say. Yeah, he's not like somebody you would hear the other side of the room, like me. You know, like
Jimmy Raikkonen. He's quick but quiet.
yeah. But he'll say something when it's worth saying. I think he's the type. Yeah. But yeah. Sorry, Alex. I think you were going to say something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, funnily enough, that was the last time that Charlie Crossan was the G2 esports driver. You might remember.
Correct. Yes.
And then he got announced in the new year when we had the silliest silly season we've ever had in sim racing. Drivers going all over the shop. Yeah. Buffalo saying, I thought the kids' ice cream made your day at the expo. I think that's directed at you there, Mr. Glover. Stefan, keep your chat in check. Stefan, we might have to have a talk with you afterwards. I mean, but Cammie, with regards to how sim racing has evolved over, you know, the past 3.5 years, where that line has been, as I said earlier, with regards to like Jan Mardenborough, Lucas Ordonez, having gotten a real life racing career as a result of just simply going on to Gran Turismo and doing the academy. Things have changed quite a lot in that sim racing is no longer, by a lot of people, especially in the community, not considered as a sideshow to real life motorsport. It is now its own entity, where you're seeing things like ESLR1, Rennsport, where there is serious prize money being thrown about now, where the full season has just got underway. They've had the ESL1 in Diriyah at Saudi Arabia, where one of the teams, I think it was Porsche Coanda, picked up $250,000 US for winning the team's side of things. Max Benecke, former Team Redline driver, now with Mouse Esports, picking up the driver's title. Sim racing is now starting to really pick up, I think, a lot of velocity, especially with new platforms. Obviously, you mentioned AC2, which is apparently due to come out early next year, 2024 provisionally. Even though Stefan Rittel was dropping hints, I think, at an SRO press conference when Kunos Simulazioni didn't want him doing that, especially when they were talking about GT2s. But how do you see how sim racing has evolved from your perspective since March 2020, when we were all put into lockdown, couldn't do anything, everyone was sat at home? How do you think has it moved in a positive direction in your aspect, or is there still further ways in which sim racing can improve for the betterment of the community?
There's a couple of things I might change. There's definitely one step. Sim racing needs to have a flagship event where everybody comes together. You know, you get esports games like League of Legends, and you've got this stadium or, you know, huge arena full of people watching. Can we all hear me? Because I've just picked up a network error.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, so that's just Twitch TV that's picked up a network error. Yeah, we need this sort of flagship event where we all congregate, whether it be like the end of season or the virtual Le Mans 24 hours. Rather than everyone racing from their home and then there being lag and then there being sort of these DDoS attacks and the race having to be restarted, which I know really irked Max Verstappen, there needs to be, right, all of these drivers are in one place and they're all in the arena and they're all on a local area network, so there can be no outside attacks from the internet, but people can watch live and be there and see these people. because esports is great, but you still need to be able to have that real life experience, just as like League of Legends and those sort of games have that, and Gran Turismo Sport. They've had live arena events, but I don't see it happening with iRacing or Assetto Corsa Competizione. And I think that's what we need. And sort of big events like Autosport International and such have been great catalysts for that, because I know the precursor of LMVS, when it was, what do they call it before? I think they just virtual Le Mans.
Virtual Le Mans
Yeah.
series.
Yes.
They were using Forza Horizon for that, if I remember correctly. I mean, yeah, like you say, ESLR1 and Rennsport have sort of tried to bring it into that stadium type area, but I think the impact where you have like League of Legends, Call of Duty, where they are packing stadiums, you've got like 8,000 to 10,000 people in a stadium. I think, yeah, like you say, ACC, the biggest thing that they've got to with regards to on-site events are normally at the Fanatec GT World Challenge for SRO Esports, where I've actually been there. I think I was there for the CrowdStrike 24 Hours of Spa. You had all the real-life pros racing the Fanatec Arena, and then the following day you had the sim racing professionals. But like you say, like iRacing, I think the biggest thing that I know of is the iRacing eNASCAR Coca-Cola series. That happens every year, but they have a land finale. But yeah, like you say, I think it is a case of trying to bring that amphitheatre style atmosphere. It is something that needs to be concentrated on. Hopefully ESL R1 and Rennsport can sort of try and move that forward. I think that's probably they're the ones that have gotten closest to it, I think, but we're not quite over that line yet.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think is going to make it happen though? Because you know, you look at the other games where I guess they've been doing it longer. That's why they get the big crowds. Is that why we think it is, or do we think sim racing can get to that point?
No, I think League of Legends is its own game. It is its own thing, and sim racing is split across iRacing, Assetto Corsa, Rennsport, Automobilista, and Gran Turismo Sport, or 7, which might water it down, because there is no one bit of software, is there? With if you want to watch a League of Legends game, there's only one game. It's called League of Legends. If you want to go watch a sim race, which one do I go to? Is it the Gran Turismo one, the ACC one, the iRacing one? And then they're all competing to be the best one, but there is no one standout event. You know, you've got the Excel Centre in London, but I know there's Formula E there, but I don't think they've got a massive sim racing event booked in.
They had Formula E esports there at the same time. I'm led to believe.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, Formula E Accelerate. They had. They started things off with Berlin, because I was actually there when Lewis McLeod and Cam Roger were actually commentating on it from London.
But it's not its own event.
No, it's not its own event. It's
very much
piggybacking.
Yes,
piggybacking.
Piggybacking, yeah.
But if it was its own event where people, no, I want to watch sim racing. The people who, no, I'm not turning up for real life racing. I'm turning up for sim racing. Does that, need more of that?
Yeah.
Because I imagine a lot of people who went for Formula E didn't then go and watch the sim racing bit.
Yeah, I guess the problem is that you somehow got to create an audience, and I think to Hurst's point in chat is like it's easier to access, and then maybe when it grows organically, then maybe it can become its own thing. Somebody's put here. Someone needs to figure out a way to have a sim racing support series that travels within in real life motorsport series where they already have a captive audience that enjoys racing.
I can see that there is a little bit of a parallel with what D-Stack 11 has just said, and this is when I mentioned about SRO Esports, because it's the first championship in real life that has decided to bring an esports parameter to the championships, where they actually compete for prize money, they compete for points to go towards the actual championship itself, but it isn't traditionally a support series. It is one that is part of the main feature attraction when it comes to the Fanatec GT World Challenge. I mean, for instance, if you have, it's one of those things like if you said, for instance, you've got the Lamborghini The Real Race, that's a support series, but that's not done on site. That's done remotely, where everyone's
Correct.
at home
Yeah.
in their rigs. But if you had something like, say, for instance, the GT4 Europeans, let's take Fanatec GT World Challenge as an example. Okay, you have multiple support classes, the most prominent of which is the GT4 European series. So if you could do something that incorporated SRO esports and have that, but then you're effectively doing the same as what you would have. Well, let's put it this way: you'd be putting the GT4 endurance, series, the European series people into the same rigs as what the SRO pros are doing. So you could have two support, well, a support series that's backing up the main attraction, but is it going to be again like what they've done with GT World Challenge, put the points and the prize money up for those events? So you really need something. I think it's just Herfelham says a very good point, most likely too expensive, but having the Sim Racing Expo at the same venue as the big international automotive, the IAA that happens every year, the German car show would be so smart and supporting.
I think if they did it in winter, if sim racing events happened in winter, then they've got a bit of a monopoly when most racing series, they're done for the year.
Yeah.
Sort of A1 Grand Prix or that sort of style where you have it in the winter months, the off season, then you've got a monopoly on, motorsport starved fans who are just craving for any racing. I don't care if it's virtual or real, I just need to see some racing, see some battles on track. And then, like you've got the IAA and Autosport is in January and Motorsport Days Live is in November, and Motorsport Days Live is in the Silverstone wing, and you've got Autosport International at the NEC, and you've got big venues like Excel Centre, these big venues that can hold these events, and then they're not simply support series. And I've been to the GT World Challenge at Brands Hatch. I don't remember seeing a sim racing support event set up there. There were some rigs that people could just queue up
every
and have
round,
a
is
play
it?
on. But so they didn't take it to Brands Hatch. And with
I don't
Formula
think it's
E,
every round, is it?
No,
Is it? I don't think it is, Alex, is it? No.
It's the endurance championship that it's part and parcel of.
Yeah.
Because with Brands Hatch, that will be part of the GT World Challenge Europe powered by AWS. So you've got the Sprint Cup and you've got the Endurance Cup.
Yeah.
So Brands Hatch, it wouldn't have it there. Whereas at Spa, you had people actually qualifying for wildcards for the SRO esports event. I think also one of the other factors that we've got to consider, folks, is along with trying to look at, like, say, support series, you also got to look at the budgets that some of the, like say, some of these championships have. But they may not be able to control all the purse strings, which is why you see, like, SRO esports, when it's the Endurance Cup, it's done on site. D-Stack 11 is actually taking the words right out of my mouth. How do you draw top competitors? Prize money is one of the things that people do compete for, but then is it marketable enough to have audience spending money, which brings sponsors, which brings prize purses? Well, if SRO, Stefan Rettel and the SRO organization have done a very good job of incorporating SRO esports into the championship not as a sideshow. I'm not going to use that word because I don't think it's fair. As a new attraction to part of the paddock. Okay? But then incorporating it as part of the real life championship has changed, and as I said about the Sim IRL and Sim Racing line being blurred, SRO are the ones that have put that to work alongside each other, so there being no blurred line, that everyone's in the same boat. I think it's also the fact that when you have organisations or when you have shows like the ADAC Sim Racing Expo, which is now going to Dortmund between the 13th and 15th of October, you've then got to consider what budgets are in place for that show, what companies are on board, how many exhibitors are going to be there. There's a lot that I think we can sort of say this until the cows come home, but then you have to look at the business side of everything else. And I don't mean just from the competitors, but I think also from the organisers, because of course the organisers want to make it attractive. But if they don't have enough support to hold the event, are they going to be able to put the prize money up for teams to come? If you see what I'm saying. I know it's a bit
Yeah.
long-winded what I've just said, but there is the side from what you said, Cammie, which I completely understand and I completely appreciate and 100% agree with. But we also do have to look at the other side of the coin, that it's a 50-50. That I think it's that the community and the organisations should sort of conglomerate a little bit and try and work this out between them, saying, okay, well, look, we can't offer this prize money because of we've got these overheads. And when you think at the Fanatec Arena, there are hundreds of tons of equipment. You've got all the sim rigs from AK Informatica. You've got all the people that are going to be on site, all the equipment, cabling, internet connection, power, space. There's just so much. I mean, Lentilon actually comes in and says grassroots growth is better than slapping $1 million prize pool on a game and calling it an esport. I think it's about starting it from grassroots and helping, like say with Rocket F4, Deegan Fairclough in British F4 this year, winning a you know, what was it, the Rocket Race Stars program? I think it was, Cammie, wasn't it, last year?
I think so. I'm mixing up with World's Fastest Gamer. But
No,
in
I'm
my
not.
mind.
No, I'm no, because otherwise I'd be mixing myself up with James Baldwin on that sentence.
Yeah.
But you know, but I think it's like grassroots where you're now seeing ASNs come in, Motorsport UK Esports, run by Paul Crawford. They're trying to bring and I know people are probably going to slate Motorsport UK for doing this, but I think it's not a bad thing. Whereby it's a case of looking at it to assist people to get into sim racing via a different set of activations, like hosting championships.
Yeah.
Like say the Motorsport UK GT. I think there's a GT challenge coming out very, very soon. But I think it's like ASN's trying to involve more people into grassroots sim racing. Having research tools available on, how can they enter into sim racing in general. I think it's about if the ASNs. I know the ADAC do a hell of a lot of sim racing for grassroots motorsport over in Germany, but I think it's like the ASNs over, like say UK, all over the place. They really need to be the ones that need to start bringing new talent through and trying to give them the education, the right information through help via the community to help push things forward, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I'd say a fair analysis of it. I mean, I think I'm definitely being overruled with terms of, like, don't just make $1 million prize pool and sort of call it an esport. It's a hard balance, I suppose. It's that I do yearn for the arena events, but maybe they're happening. Are they happening more in Germany than in the UK? Would you find, because you've got the Sim Racing Expo and Gamescom, they're both in Germany. So
yeah,
is this just something maybe we're missing out on a little bit in the UK?
Yeah, I think it's probably why Paul Crawford and the team at Motorsport UK Esports are trying to sort of move things forward, and it's about sort of helping people grow through a ladder style system, and to be there to support drivers and to support esports teams to move forward. Heflem says that I think also that lots of viewers don't really care about the brands. Okay, true. When you've got people like Mercedes, BMW, Ferrari, Porsche putting so much money into esports now, they said that they want to have nice, famous drivers that compete.
Well, they wanted to watch Verstappen, didn't they? When he was at Le Mans Virtual Series, people tuned in to watch how well Verstappen did. And when Jimmy Broadbent was racing in the Praga in Brit car, they doubled their viewer number because people just wanted to see, wow, how well will Jimmy fare against these real world driving veterans.
Exactly.
So it's almost like, when people have said, I like watching the 100-meter sprint in the Olympics, but there should also just be an ordinary person there, just so I can sort of gauge how just a lay person does against them. And I think that's very much what Jimmy Broadbent and James Baldwin have done, except they've just come in and shown sort of the veterans up a bit.
Yeah, that's very true.
You know, and when I watch James Baldwin going around Brands Hatch, I'm going, he's one of us. I'm like, I'm like him. I'm a sim racer as well. So
Yeah, no, exactly.
I could do that too.
Yeah, that's what I like to believe too, in my head. Yeah, I think also what needs to change sometimes is, I think I've seen it over the years is people in the sim racing community see other brands and other competitors as the enemy, where really they should work better together to grow. There's enough of the pie for everybody to take a slice, and I think sometimes there are people out there a little bit too protective, and don't collaborate enough for me. And I think we need to see a bit. I need to see a bit more of that. And you mentioned Brands Hatch earlier on, and I didn't want to interrupt the flow that was going on, but I do know, and it's a game we haven't mentioned, Race Room. I do know there's a Race Room centre at Brands Hatch.
Every time I go there, it seems to be closed.
Yeah, well, I've never actually been to it to go to it, but I do know it. I do know it's there. But Race Room is a game that tends to get forgotten about a lot of time. But it is there, and I do find it quite funny, especially in the sim racing community. And this might not be related to why it hasn't grown, but people that go and spend thousands of pounds on the latest hardware, but then when someone brings out DLC and it costs £10. They kick up a fuss about paying for DLC. So maybe there isn't the money there that needs to be. I don't know, but I don't know what the answer is. But
I do.
With Red Sport, they're trying to do something different, which is good to see. And people could sit there and critique it all they want.
Yeah.
But unless people try these things, you don't know if it's going to work. I was talking to someone the other day at work he was talking about making mistakes. I was like, well, people make mistakes. When you were learning to walk, you didn't just learn to walk. You had to fall over, probably, cry a few times or hurt your knees and things like that. Like, to get good at something, you will have a few bumps in the road. And I think we're probably seeing that in some respects to the whole esports genre where sim racing is concerned as well. Everybody just expects everything to be unbelievably amazing from day one. We don't. I mean, these people don't live in the real world. We've got to learn and try things and see what works.
I think sometimes people think, I've spent all this money, therefore I should be good. Because recently, sim rig equipment has gotten very expensive, and there needs to be a bit more of a push for budget equipment. Because I know you can get these very fancy, direct drive wheels and pedals with hydraulics and springs, and they're all cast from a single block of aluminium, and that makes it even more expensive. Or they've got fancy materials, and some people just go, hey, I just need a £200 wheel that just lets me compete on a relatively, it's got to be accessible. And what I'm seeing more and more of is these sim racing centres popping up. Will Dendy's, one of his title sponsors, is Simply Race in Milton Keynes. Mm-hmm. And being sort of one of Will's minor sponsors myself, I've had plenty of free entry to Simply Race, and that is a great experience. If you've never been, wholly recommend it. It's in the centre of Milton Keynes, opposite sort of the snow zone snowboarding skiing centre, and they have 15 or 16 proper racing rigs, each with 3 monitors that surround you, with a good Thrustmaster wheel, and just all... I'm on a motor racing thing, I've just said that. You could have a motor racing wheel as well, and you just get to have that real experience where you have your race, and then you get up, and then you can talk to the people you were just racing, and talk about the race, and have a snack, and have a beer, because, you're sim racing, you can have a beer, and it's just a much more social experience as well. And I'm finding there's more of these cropping up. There's, I think it's called Sim Motorsport in Chatham, and there's one in Brighton called Vroom. I've not been to those two, but...
No, neither have I, but it keeps appearing in my Facebook feed, like advertising to me.
So... Do it. Yeah, do it. Come along.
I don't have a need. I've got a rig here. Why do I need to go somewhere to go and try? Unless I'm missing something completely.
Well, they run their own events sometimes. They'll have their own series, their own championships. And yeah, they provide all the equipment, and I suppose it does stop with R Factor 2, because there isn't that setup base. It does stop one person being able to practice 18 hours a day every day, and then one person who goes, oh, I just gotten home from work, I've only got like 2 hours to spend to practice. If you're all being thrown into Simply Race or something and you don't have a setup and you're all kind of on that level playing field, because in real life there'd be restrictions on testing, then it makes for a bit more of a equal playing field. And it's fun when you get driver swaps and you're actually getting out the suite and having to swap with another person, and that other person's right there and you can talk to each other. And we can't all be isolated at home. We had to do that because of COVID, but there needs to be more of these centres, and you've got town centres going empty now. Bring back arcades, make them more esportsy centres.
Yeah, I just want to a couple of comments that are coming to chat when we were talking, what I was saying about things being fragmented. DStack11 has just added, how do you eventually leverage the grassroots enthusiasm into a single large stage event/series? Ironically, the huge amount of choice we enjoy as sim racers may be the single element holding back its growth. The market is incredibly fragmented, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier on, right, about the pie. I think there are enough slices, but we also need people to start working together, and Herf has come back with pretty true. Having it fragmented is a blessing in some regards, but as a growth, it's mostly likely hurting the process. Then Lentilion has also come back with, I see the only way for this to work is for people to only care about the racers/teams and not the sims which they're racing in. And then DStack responds with, but how do you even get the racers teams focused on a single sim to compete? It's like herding cats. Which is a really good point. And I think we've touched on something here, is the fact that we just need the industry to kind of collaborate and see each other as friends rather than as enemies. And I think that's really important. But the likes of Moser, with the hardware side of things, are doing a fantastic job, like launching new products and kind of shaking up the market a little bit, and putting these new wheels and bases in certain price ranges. I mean, the other week they just announced their new wheel, the truck simulator wheel. It looks, for those who love truck simulator, I'm not really one of those people, but I can see if you do, you're like, oh my god, that's amazing, right? And I completely get it. So
that's brilliant. I mean, I've got a different brand wheel, and I've been considering upgrading, and the brand I've got, they never seem to have anything in stock. And people out there will know immediately what brand I mean. They ship from Germany, I think, and it's like, oh, this is out of stock, that's out of stock. It's also quite expensive. So I'm thinking, Moser have done a great job in just, well, hey, we have stuff in stock and it's reasonably priced, and we're going to cater to those niche markets like the truck simulator. And I've played truck simulator, and it's a hoot. It's a real laugh, especially the multiplayer mod.
I'm sure Jimmy Broadbent's possibly got his eyes on one of those Moser Racing truck simulator wheels.
Oh, for sure.
Probably Chaz Draycott as well, because he's been doing a lot on his YouTube channel quite recently. Good old Chaz. He's a good bloke, that guy.
Yeah,
I'm just getting complimented for my pro level product placement in the conversation. But thank you very much. Cammie, thank you very much for joining us. We're going to have to sadly bring this conversation to an end, but for people who want to check out your products, where can they go?
They can go to goforthegap.etsy.com, or they can go to my website, cammiesturch.com. I'm currently working on the Go for the Gap website, or they can just email me at cammie@goforthegap.co.uk. I think my website's goforthegap.co.uk, actually. Socials, I'm just at Cammie Racing. I'm Cammie, I do racing. Figured, just at Cammie Racing. Couldn't think of anything more interesting.
Well, thank you very much. And Alex, thank you very much for also being here and adding some really handy little insights there into the conversation as well. So fantastic stuff. Right, I've been Paul Glover. Alex and Cammie have been with me today. This has been the SGP podcast powered by Moser Racing. We'll be back in a moment after some ads.